Don't you dare close your eyes, Ethan! Andra screamed, pressing her hands against his chest as the heart monitor flatlined. Thunder roared over the Lennox estate. The billionaire froze, helpless, while the maid everyone ignored refused to stop fighting. And then, beep, beep, beep. Now let me tell you how this incredible story unfolded. Subscribe, share your heart in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from, because your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The clock on the wall struck 9. Each tick echoed through the marble halls like a countdown no one could stop. The storm outside pounded the glass with furious rhythm. Lightning flashed across the Manhattan skyline in the distance, throwing the outline of the Lennox estate into haunting silhouette. Inside one of its gilded rooms, Ethan Lennox, the billionaire's only son, lay in a hospital bed imported from Mount Sinai Hospital just hours earlier. The best equipment money could buy, but utterly useless now. Machines blinked half-heartedly. The oxygen hissed. The life draining from him couldn't care less about his father's fortune. In the corner of the room, Andra Brown, the family's maid, stood still. A 34-year-old black woman with tired eyes and the kind of strength no paycheck could measure. She'd been working here for 5 years. 5 long years of silence, of scrubbing marble floors, folding 1,000 thread-count sheets, and pretending she didn't hear the arguments between father and son. And now she was the only one left who refused to walk away. Ethan's accident had been all over the New York nightly news. His black Maserati had spun out on the FDR Drive at 70 miles per hour, a blur of wealth and recklessness turned tragedy. Paramedics said he was lucky to make it to the ER alive. Mount Sinai's best surgeons tried everything, but when his heart began to fail, his father had him transferred home, to die surrounded by comfort instead of strangers. Andra had been told to stay only to keep the room clean. But when the doctors left, she stayed for him. Now, under the low hum of backup generators, she watched him breathe. Slow, fragile, mechanical. Ethan's eyelids fluttered open. His voice came out hoarse. "You're still here?" Andra stepped closer. "Somebody has to be." He tried to laugh, but it broke into a cough. "You're the maid. And you're the one still breathing," she said quietly. He blinked, studying her for a long second. "Why are you crying?" Andra froze. She hadn't realized she was. She wiped her cheek quickly. "I'm not. It's just, this air purifier keeps drying out my eyes." He smiled faintly, a trace of sarcasm returning. "Yeah, sure." The clock ticked again. 9:12, 48 minutes left, if the doctor was right. From the hallway came the sound of heavy shoes. The door swung open. Richard Lennox, Ethan's father, one of Wall Street's untouchable billionaires, entered the room in a charcoal suit, rain dripping from his coat. His voice filled the silence like thunder. "How long?" he asked the on-call nurse. She hesitated. "About an hour, sir." Richard nodded stiffly, refusing to look at his son. He walked toward the window, staring out at the storm. "You always had to push it, didn't you? Always had to go faster, drink harder, prove something." Ethan turned his head weakly. "You here to scold me or say goodbye?" His father didn't respond. The silence between them was louder than any argument. Andra shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Lennox, maybe he should rest." Richard snapped his gaze toward her. "You're here to clean, not to speak." Ethan coughed, voice barely above a whisper. "She's the only one who talks to me like I'm still human." The billionaire flinched, his mouth tightening. For a moment, guilt flashed in his eyes, quickly buried under pride. "Then you deserve each other," he said bitterly, turning away. He left the room, and the slam of the door made the heart monitor skip. Andra exhaled, her pulse hammering. You shouldn't talk to your father like that. Why not? Ethan muttered. It's the only way he listens. She looked at him. This man she'd dusted around for years but never truly seen until tonight. Beneath the bruises and arrogance, he looked scared, lost. Maybe he just doesn't know how to love you right, she said softly. He turned his head toward her, eyes glassy. You sound like you've been there. She hesitated. Yeah, I have. Something changed in his face then. A flicker of curiosity, maybe even connection. He opened his mouth to speak again, but a sharp beep-beep from the heart monitor cut him off. The line trembled, dipping dangerously. Andra's stomach clenched. Ethan, I'm okay, he rasped. Don't call anyone. She leaned closer, shaking her head. You need a doctor. No, he whispered. Just stay, please. The desperation in his tone stopped her. She reached out, placing her hand gently over his. His skin was cold, but his grip, weak as it was, fought to hold on. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. Andra glanced toward the window, watching lightning illuminate the gardens. Acres of wealth, statues, and silence. Everything about this house screamed power, and yet inside it, one of the most powerful men's sons was slipping away, and the only one fighting for him was a maid with a broken past and a borrowed faith. The clock ticked to 9:40. Ethan's voice broke the quiet. Andra, do you believe in miracles? She stared at the flickering lights above them, her own reflection faint in the glass. I used to, she whispered, before life took everything I prayed for. He closed his eyes. Then maybe tonight's your second chance. Lightning struck again, closer this time, shaking the windows. The machines beeped faster, alarms beginning to sound. Andra jumped to her feet. Ethan! Ethan, stay with me! He opened his eyes one last time, meeting hers. If you're still here when this ends, tell him I forgave him. The clock hit 9:45. 15 minutes left. Andra looked toward the hallway. No one was coming. The storm had knocked the power grid offline, and the staff had fled home before it hit. She was alone with him now, in a house filled with everything except life. She took his hand again and whispered, You're not leaving yet. Not like this. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, then faded. Inside, the clock ticked on, every sound heavier than the last. If you only had 1 hour left, who would you want beside you? Someone who loves you, or someone who believes in you? Comment below, would you stay and fight for a stranger's life, even if the world told you to walk away? The lights flickered again. For a second, the mansion fell into complete darkness, and Andra's heart seized with it. When the power returned, the monitors blinked weakly, the machines clinging to life just as desperately as Ethan was. She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the shallow rhythm beneath her palm. Come on, baby, stay with me, she whispered, voice trembling. Don't give up now. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. You called me baby, he rasped. She froze, a faint, startled laugh slipping out. Guess I did. He tried to smile, but the effort looked painful. My nurse never did that. I'm not your nurse, she said, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. And thank God for that. Somewhere downstairs, thunder rattled the French doors that led to the courtyard. A gust of wind slammed through, sending papers and curtains flying. Andra rushed to close the door, the rain soaking her uniform instantly. When she turned back, Ethan was staring at her, his expression soft, as if seeing her for the first time. How long you been working here? He asked weakly. 5 years, she said, wringing the water from her sleeve. Long enough to know your father doesn't like to be told no. He chuckled hoarsely. That sounds about right. Andra pulled a chair beside his bed. You shouldn't talk. You need your strength. Strength's overrated, he muttered. What's your name again? She blinked. Andra Brown. He smiled faintly. Pretty name. Yeah, well, she said softly. It's survived a lot. He looked at her then, really looked, and saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen in years. Fire, faith, maybe even pain. You talk like someone who's lost things, he murmured. Andra hesitated, her gaze lowering. Everybody's lost something. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door opened slightly. Richard Lennox again. His face looked older in the flickering light. The storm had stripped away the armor of power and money. He glanced at his son, then at Andra, but said nothing. Andra stood, her body tense. Mr. Lennox, he's holding on. The machines are weak, but... I can see that, he interrupted. His tone was sharper than he intended. Has the ambulance arrived? She shook her head. The roads are flooded. They said they can't make it through. He muttered a curse under his breath, then moved closer to his son's bed. Ethan, he said quietly. I called Dr. Wilson. He said they'll send a helicopter when the rain stops. Ethan gave a small, breathless laugh. You think I'm going to survive long enough for that? Don't talk like that, his father snapped. Ethan looked up at him, eyes glassy. Why not? It's the only honest conversation we've had in years. Richard turned away, his jaw tightening. I didn't raise you to quit. You didn't raise me at all, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the air like broken glass. Andra watched the exchange, her stomach twisting. She'd seen that look before. Sons who wanted to be seen, fathers who didn't know how. She took a cautious step forward. Mr. Lennox, maybe he just wants you to listen. Richard's eyes flicked toward her, sharp. You don't tell me how to talk to my son, Ethan groaned. She's the only one who should. The room went silent. Richard's phone buzzed. Another call, another crisis. He ignored it for once. His shoulders slumped, the weight of years of pride pressing down. Ethan, he began, voice cracking. I don't know how to fix this. Ethan looked at him, eyes tired but soft. You can start by not leaving. Andra turned toward the window to give them space. Lightning flashed again, illuminating her reflection. A woman caught in someone else's tragedy, fighting ghosts of her own. Why are you still here? Richard asked suddenly. She turned back, startled. Because someone has to be. You don't even know him. She hesitated. Maybe not. But I know what it's like to lose someone you weren't ready to say goodbye to. The billionaire's expression faltered. For the first time, he didn't have a retort. Ethan's voice came again, weak but clear. Andra, who'd you lose? She looked down at her hands. Her knuckles tightened. My boy, she whispered. Car accident in Brooklyn, 2 years ago. Hit and run. I prayed for a miracle. It never came. The room went still. The storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Ethan's eyes glistened. I'm sorry. She smiled faintly, the pain softening. Don't be. I think that's why I stayed tonight. Maybe I couldn't save mine, but I can try to save you. Ethan blinked, tears slipping silently down his cheek. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The hum of the generator, the distant thunder, the rhythm of his fading heartbeat. It all felt like one fragile thread keeping the world from breaking apart. At 10:02, Ethan's hand reached for hers. His fingers were ice cold, but his grip was desperate. "Andra," he whispered, "if I don't make it, don't." She interrupted firmly. "You will. Promise me something," he said, his voice cracking. "If I die, tell him I wasn't angry anymore." Andra swallowed hard, nodding. "You'll tell him yourself." He smiled weakly. "You sound sure." "I am," she said, "because I'm not letting go. Not again." The heart monitor beeped slower now, the rhythm shallow. Outside, the storm began to quiet, the air heavier, charged with something waiting to happen. Andra looked up toward the ceiling, whispering so softly even the billionaire couldn't hear. "Please, God. Just once more. If you were standing in that room, would you have stayed to fight, or accepted fate and walked away? Comment your truth below. Have you ever felt someone's life depend on your faith?" The rain finally began to taper off, but inside the Lennox estate, chaos was brewing in slow motion. The backup power flickered again. Shadows jumped across the walls, the air heavy with disinfectant and dread. Andra Brown sat beside Ethan's bed, her hands trembling as she clutched his icy fingers. The beeping from the monitor had slowed, soft, distant, erratic. Each sound felt like it was counting down to something final. "Don't you fall asleep on me now?" she whispered, voice breaking. "Not yet, Ethan." He smiled faintly, eyes barely open. "You make dying sound like a bad idea." She tried to laugh, but it caught in her throat. "It is a bad idea, especially when someone's still fighting for you." He looked at her, chest rising weakly. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not," she said, her voice low but steady. "But I know pain when I see it, and I don't walk away from it anymore." Ethan's lips twitched into the faintest smile, the kind that hurts to see because it looks like goodbye. The door burst open with a jolt. Richard Lennox stormed in, his soaked trench coat clinging to his frame, eyes wild with desperation. Behind him came Dr. Wilson, the family's private physician from Mount Sinai Hospital, followed by 2 medics carrying an emergency kit. "Why the hell is he still here?" Richard barked. "You said the ambulance couldn't get through, so I brought the doctor myself." Dr. Wilson went straight to the bedside, checking Ethan's vitals. His expression darkened immediately. "He's crashing." Ethan's voice came out rough. "Hey, Doc. Long drive?" The doctor's jaw clenched. "Save your breath." Richard hovered over them, gripping the end of the bed so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Do something. I don't care what it takes." Dr. Wilson shook his head. "His heart's too weak. The adrenaline's already wearing off." Richard's voice cracked. "Then fix it. You're supposed to fix things." Ethan's weak laughter cut through the room. "Dad, you can't buy more time." Richard turned toward him, voice trembling with anger and fear. "Don't you dare talk like that. You think I haven't done everything for you?" "Yeah," Ethan rasped. "Everything except see me." The room went dead silent. Andra looked between them, tears stinging her eyes. She wanted to stop them, to take back the words neither could unsay. But it was too late. Richard's chest heaved. "Don't you throw that at me," he snapped. "I worked my whole damn life to make sure you had everything." Ethan's breathing faltered. "Everything. But you." The doctor looked up. "His pulse is dropping." Richard reached for his son's hand, but Ethan's fingers were already slipping away. "No. No. Stay with me," he begged. "You hear me, son? Don't do this." Ethan's eyes rolled slightly, unfocused. "It's okay," he murmured. "It's not your fault." Richard's voice cracked apart. "It is. Everything's my fault." The beeping flattened. A single tone filled the room. Cold, unbroken, final. Andra froze. No. The doctor looked at the clock. Time of death, 10:32 p.m. Richard stumbled backward, shaking his head. No, that's wrong. He can't. But Ethan's chest had gone still, his color fading, lips pale. Andra's body moved before her brain could catch up. She climbed onto the bed, pressing both palms against his chest. Come back, she cried. You don't get to quit now. Miss Brown, Dr. Wilson said gently. Please, don't touch me, she shouted, her voice shaking the air. Not when I can still try. She began chest compressions, counting under her breath through tears. 1, 2, 3. The sound of rain tapping the windows mixed with her ragged breathing. 4, 5. Richard stood frozen, his face ghost white. You'll hurt him. Andra didn't look up. He's already gone. Let me try. The doctor watched, torn between science and hope. Andra's voice broke as she leaned closer, whispering, You're not done, Ethan. You hear me? You're not done. You still have something to live for. She pressed harder. Please, God, not again. Don't take another son tonight. For a moment, there was only silence. A suffocating, endless silence. Then, a faint beep. Andra froze mid-compression. Everyone turned toward the monitor. Another beep. The doctor blinked, disbelief flashing in his eyes. That's impossible. Richard stumbled forward, tears already forming. What's happening? Andra's voice trembled. He's fighting. Dr. Wilson quickly checked his pulse. Heartbeat. It's faint, but it's there. Richard covered his mouth, sobbing into his hand. How? Andra whispered. Because I never stopped believing he could come back. Ethan's chest rose again, shallow but steady. Andra collapsed against the bed, tears of exhaustion and relief spilling freely. You stubborn, beautiful boy, she whispered. You just had to prove me wrong, didn't you? Richard fell to his knees, reaching for her hand. I don't understand how this happened. Andra looked at him through tears. You don't have to understand it. You just have to love him while you can. The doctor stood in stunned silence. The machines hummed softly again, that fragile sound of life returning. For the first time that night, the mansion didn't feel like a grave. It felt like grace. If you were in Andra's place, heartbroken, exhausted, but with one last chance to believe, would you have kept fighting? Comment your truth. Do you think miracles are made by faith or by love that refuses to give up? By dawn, the rain had stopped. The mansion, which only hours ago felt like a tomb, now glowed with soft amber light spilling through tall glass windows. The storm had washed everything clean. The roads, the air, maybe even the hearts inside. Andra Brown sat by the bed, her eyes red from crying, her hands still trembling from the hours of fear and prayer. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that flat line. And then, impossibly, she heard that first faint beep again. Ethan Lennox was alive. He was weak, pale, still hooked up to a portable monitor, but alive. The doctors from Mount Sinai had finally arrived at dawn by helicopter, checking his vitals, exchanging disbelieving looks like men watching a ghost breathe. His vitals are stabilizing, one of them said. This shouldn't be possible. Andra just smiled, exhausted. Maybe not possible, she whispered, but real. Richard Lennox stood quietly by the window, still wearing last night's clothes. His billion-dollar world, the stock alerts, the boardrooms, the chaos of Wall Street, felt microscopic now. He turned toward the bed, eyes full of something foreign to him, humility. When Ethan stirred, Richard stepped forward, voice trembling. "Hey, son." Ethan blinked groggily. "You look terrible." Richard laughed, a shaky, broken sound that ended with a sob. "Guess we both do." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan said softly, "You stayed." Richard nodded, the words catching in his throat. "I should have stayed years ago." Ethan swallowed hard, emotion clouding his tired eyes. "You didn't know how." His father's voice cracked. "No, but I do now." The silence between them wasn't the cold kind anymore. It was full, thick with everything they'd never said, finally finding its way out without words. Andra looked away, giving them privacy. She busied herself with adjusting the blanket, though her own hands were shaking from the weight of what she'd witnessed. When Richard turned to her, his eyes were wet. "Miss Brown?" She straightened, still unsure whether to speak or stay silent. He crossed the room slowly, like a man trying to approach something sacred. "You saved my son." She shook her head. "God did that, sir. I just refused to stop trying." Richard smiled through tears. "No, you believed. That's rarer than anything money can buy." He reached into his coat pocket, the gesture instinctive, like every problem in his world had a dollar-shaped solution. But then he stopped himself, his voice softened. "There isn't enough money on earth to pay for what you did." Andra exhaled, relieved. "Good, because I wouldn't take it." Ethan chuckled weakly from the bed. "She's not kidding, Dad. She's tougher than she looks." Andra smiled, shaking her head. "Don't you start teasing me already. You've been alive for 5 minutes." Outside, the first rays of sunlight poured through the glass, reflecting off the marble floors. The estate looked different. Smaller, somehow. Less intimidating. Ethan's nurse entered briefly to check his vitals and smiled at Andra. "You're the talk of Mount Sinai this morning. They called it the Brown Miracle." Andra froze. "The what?" "The Brown Miracle," the nurse repeated, laughing softly. "CPR revival after flatline. 3 minutes. That's unheard of." Andra's cheeks flushed. "I wasn't thinking. I just couldn't lose him." The nurse smiled knowingly. "That's what saved him." Hours passed. The storm gave way to calm. Ethan drifted in and out of sleep, each time waking to find Andra still there. She hadn't left his side once. Her eyes were heavy, but her spirit was light, as if for the first time in years she'd found peace. When Ethan woke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You stayed." She smiled faintly. "Somebody had to make sure you didn't try dying again." He grinned weakly. "You're kind of bossy, you know that?" "Only with people worth saving," she said softly. Their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them. Gratitude. Connection. Something tender neither had time to name. Later that afternoon, Richard approached Andra as she stood by the window overlooking the estate's gardens. The city skyline shimmered in the distance, that relentless New York energy pulsing beneath the quiet of Long Island. "You said you lost a son," he said gently. Andra nodded. "I did." "I'm sorry," Richard murmured. "No parent should ever outlive their child." She gave him a tired but genuine smile. "No father should ever give up on theirs." He took a deep breath. "You've given me something I can't repay, but I can honor it." She tilted her head. "How?" "By being the kind of man my son thought I could never be." That night, the house was quiet again, but not empty. Ethan was resting peacefully, Richard was downstairs making phone calls, not to brokers, but to family members, reconnecting with people he hadn't spoken to in years. Andra stood outside on the terrace, watching the last remnants of the storm drift out to sea. The night air smelled like rain and new beginnings. Behind her, she heard Ethan's voice, still weak but steady. "Beautiful view, huh?" She turned, smiling softly. "You should be in bed." "I will," he said, stepping forward slowly with the IV stand beside him. "Just wanted to see what sunrise looks like, after dying." She laughed quietly. "You've got a strange sense of humor for a man who flatlined." He leaned against the railing beside her, eyes on the horizon. "Guess I have a strange reason for wanting to live, too." Andra looked at him, puzzled. "What's that?" He turned toward her, eyes raw, honest, shining with emotion. "You." The words hit her harder than she expected. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Ethan reached for her hand. "You gave me back my life. I don't know what that means yet, but I want to find out." She smiled, tears welling again. "Then start by living it." He squeezed her hand gently. "Only if you're part of it." Andra laughed through her tears. "You better focus on walking before you start making promises, Lennox." He smiled. "That's fair, but just so you know, I keep my promises." As the sun broke fully over the New York skyline, the light flooded the terrace, painting them both in gold. A billionaire's son reborn. A woman who believed when no one else would. Two broken hearts stitched together by something stronger than reason. Faith, love, and a miracle born in a storm. Andra looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're gonna be okay." He smiled, eyes glistening. "We're gonna be okay." The world seemed to pause on that line. Soft, sacred, complete. If you were Andra Brown, standing between death and faith, would you have believed enough to keep fighting? Drop your answer in the comments. Do miracles happen by chance, or because someone refuses to stop loving? Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If even a single moment, a look, or a word touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what part made you feel the most. Your words, your support, they're what keep this family of stories alive. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The next story is even deeper, more powerful, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Click the video on your screen. Your next story begins there.